You're watching Pyro Media Network.
Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We hope your experience is fruitful. Please feel free to visit our website to find out how you can join our growing family. While we are loading your experience, please do us a quick favor and hit that like button from whichever platform you're watching or listening on. Also, share so others may enjoy as well. And we hope you would consider hitting that subscribe or follow button so you can check out more of our amazing content. All right, let's start the show.
Hey, welcome to my show. It's just Kim. Welcome. Thank you for coming back. And if this is the first time you ever joined us, you know, it's just Kim. It's a show, usually all things women, all things relationships, but really a good time for you to sit back and enjoy the conversation. Today I'm moving a little different. Moving just a tiny bit different today. I usually have shows where I talk to women. We talk about girl stuff, relationships, all those things, right? But today I'm moving just a tiny bit different. I have a male guest with me today, and he's going to talk about his book that he wrote. Very good book. I want to just first open the show, just talking a little bit about him. I've known him for, oh my gosh, probably over 25, maybe even close to 30 years. He's been a good friend, like family to me. But I just want to read a little bit about him, and then I'll tell you who he is, right? So let me tell you about this person who I've watched grow and become this amazing phenomenon in the community, and social media, and just everything. So this person is a prominent writer, speaker, educator, social entrepreneur, focused on the intersection of race, sexuality, faith, and public health. He is the director of community outreach and engagement at the UCLA Care Center. He's an author of the book that we're going to talk about tonight, Faithful and Forgotten, Navigating Race, Sexuality, and Belonging to the Black Church, which explores how Black Christian, gay, and bisexual men navigate religious spaces. He's a lecturer. He's a speaker. He he's the co-author, or the co-owner rather, of Watch VIM. So that is a streaming platform that highlights films, series, and stories for LGBTQ people of color. He's an advocate for social justice. He's very much involved in HIV education and outreach. He founded something called Red Rainbow in 2023. Just amazing, right? The list goes on and on and on. And I could talk about all the wonderful things that he's done over the years to bring him to where he is today. I'm extremely proud of him. Like I said, I've known him for many years, and just to watch him grow and develop and become this person is just amazing to me. So I want to go ahead and bring him on, none other than Dr. Donta Morrison. Hello,
hey,
doctor.
Hey, hey, Cole.
Hello, doctor. How you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I can't complain for a Tuesday.
Listen.
It's
We close to the
Tuesday, and people ask me all the time, how are you doing? And I'm like, I have no complaints.
Because it's a lot we can complain about, right?
There's
really
so many things that we could complain about, but why?
Exactly.
It's not going to change anything, right? But it's really all in how we approach the things that we go through, the experiences that we have. As long as we're learning and growing from them, hey, they're not all for naught. I just believe in everything that I go through is for a reason.
Always. It's something on the other side of everything. So
that's right.
Yeah, that's the thing about it.
So I'm excited about tonight. I've been going back, looking at the book, reading, and just kind of just engaging in what you've been talking about in your book. I know this started out as your thesis for your doctorate. Yeah, your dissertation rather. And so I know it was a lot of hard work, a lot of study, a lot of interviews, a lot of everything. And so I'm really very proud that you hung in there, you stuck with it. And it was a lot to watch. It was a lot to watch you go through. I often tell, we have another member of our church, Dr. Phoenicia Mwepo, and I told her when she was going through working on her doctorate, she had like 4 kids and a husband and different things that she was doing. And I told her, I said, man, you made that look so easy, but I know it wasn't.
Right.
I know it wasn't.
Right.
And it's the same thing with you. You made it look easy. You made it look doable. But I know that it was hard. I know that sometimes it was a struggle. I know there are probably times where you're like, yeah, forget this. Let me just quit, But I know now that you look back and think all of that struggle was worth it.
Definitely.
All of that struggle
it was a pandemic. I went through during COVID. I went through during George Floyd. I lost my father to COVID in the midst of it. So it was a lot that happened in pursuit of this earned doctorate. I always say earned because everybody's a doctor nowadays. But it definitely was a journey. So, but it proves who you are as a person when you can get that stick with this and just keep going. So I celebrate the fact that I did it. If nothing else, I'm proud of myself for that.
That's good. Yeah, we're all proud of you, as a matter of fact. Thank you. Today, you're here with me, and we're going to talk a bit about this new book that you wrote. Well, the book that you wrote during that time, Faithful and Forgotten, Navigating Race, Sexuality, Belonging to the Black Church. I have several questions for you because I was just really curious about a lot of things. But the first thing was, I guess my first question was, what inspired you to write this book?
Wow, that's a great question. Basically, just my journey through the Black church, my relationship with God, unpacking who I am as an individual, and then realizing that my experience is similar to so many others who do not have a voice or do not have the support to be heard. And I realized that in the position that I was in, as far as being a researcher and a scholar, and investigating not only the text, but investigating the mental health aspect of it all, of that journey, I wanted to just put pen to paper so that others can be made aware. And I always tell people my book is not designed to combat or change anybody's theological understanding. It is really to instill a sense of awareness and prayerfully some empathy for how we engage persons who have same-sex attraction. So that's really
and
what motivates.
I like that word that you use, empathy. I think a lot of times people give pushback on things that they're really not familiar with, and I think that empathy is something that we can give even if we don't really and fully understand, and I think that empathy is something that sometimes is lacking in the church. I'm only aware of the Black church, so
right.
It's
what my title says, Black church. I'm like, yo, I grew up in the Black church.
Yes.
I don't know how the rest of y'all get down, but as far as the Black church, I know that one. I know that one.
Yes. Yeah, that church, the Black church, is the only church that, well, I take that back. I went to a Caucasian, mostly Caucasian church for a half a second when I was in high school. And that was only because of proximity, right? But I figured out a way to get to the Black church. I was living, living at home, of course, living in the city of Cerritos. And so the only church that was close to our home was that church. And I remember my family, we were trying to go to church in our city. And I remember attending with my family. I remember one Sunday, my dad he came to church with us. And I remember leaning down, looking down the row, because we were all sitting on the same row. And I looked down and my dad was knocked out. Just sleep. And I was like, yeah, this ain't where we're supposed to be.
It's a different vibe.
It's a different vibe. And so I figured out how to navigate my way to a church that some family members were going to, which became the church that I was basically grew up in. I went there. I was 13 years old and I figured it out. I figured out how to get down to LA on the weekends. They had a banging youth department. I figured it out and I got down there on the weekends. But let me tell you, going there, figuring it out, being a part of a group that I could identify with, because living in Cerritos at that time, there were a lot of people that I couldn't identify with. And so I wanted to be around my people. And so went down there. And then the amazing thing is that my whole family ended up joining that church. The whole family, they all came. Yep. They came and they joined that church. And, that's where I grew up. That's where I met my husband. I got married there, all the things. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. So thank you for sharing what the inspiration was. So was this something that was always in your head, or this subject matter, was it always in your head? Or was it something that became like an idea once you said, I'm going to go get my doctorate?
It was a combination of things. So I grew up holiness. And if anybody knows about the Holiness Church, basically you go to hell if you breathe wrong. So everything I knew about church, I knew about God, I knew about the Spirit, everything, how I was raised, everything was a sin. Secular music was a sin, dancing was a sin, certain clothes was a sin, certain food, everything was just I grew up in that kind of environment. But knowing that I was different, knowing that something about me just didn't kind of whatever. And then I went through a whole season in that trying to be delivered and purged and cast out and all of that. So I went through that, and it messed up my relationship with God, because I never felt that I can go to him authentically. I never felt that I can talk to God like a real person with real problems. I had to kind of buffet it with this apologetic approach, and not realizing that God already knew all about me. God created me, not having that truth and that understanding, because I was a teenager. I was a kid.
Yeah.
But all I heard was that part of me that I kept a secret was wrong, was an abomination, was not going to give me access to heaven. And what I found myself doing was overcompensating church to try to smother that part of me that I just could not change. So I was a part of every single auxiliary, because I'm like, well, if I got to have this thorn in my side, I am going to do everything possible in the church.
Wow.
When I got back from the military, I didn't have a job. My job was at the church. I was cleaning the church, cleaning toilets, vacuuming, everything. Yeah, I did everything at the church for free. Because I'm like, well, I'm available. I'm home. I can do it. This will get me into heaven. But then over time, I started to resent the church, because I couldn't be who I authentically felt that I was. And the thing about it, just to keep it real, I wasn't even being intimate. I wasn't doing anything. I'm like, you guys are telling me that I'm going to hell, but I'm borderline a virgin, because y'all scared me into not having sex. So what are we doing, people? So then as I got older, and was still carrying that weight on my shoulders, and I believe that the only way that I could elevate in ministry was to, get a wife, have some children, and do all of that. So I did the whole Andrew Caldwell, I'm delivered, thing. And for all intents and purposes, I felt that I'm here, I'm okay. And I went through, I think 6 or 7 years of just dating women and trying to make it work. But deep down inside, I'm like, something is off. And I'm not saying that God can't. I'm not saying that God won't. I just know for me, Donta Morrison, something wasn't vibing. And I always would talk to God and tell myself, well, Lord, if I just have to be alone, then I'll just be alone, because it's not fair to pull a woman into my chaos. Just for appearances. And I know a lot of people unfortunately do that. They'll pull people into their, just bowl of confusion for the sake of appearances. And I knew people who I was dating women who were amazing women. I mean, loved the Lord, loved me, but it would have been so unfair for them to marry me. And I joke about this all the time. I tell people I came out twice, because I came out the first time to my mom when I was like 23 or 24. And she kind of asked me, but she asked me in front of my dad. And I was like, are you crazy? No, I'm not gay. What? Wow. And I said, can I see you in the room, please? You're talking too much. And I went in the room and I said, yeah, you guessed it. And she says, oh, okay. Real straight face. And I said, okay, I got to go to church and I'm going to Bible study. And I left. And about 4 days later, she called me and I was at work and she says, hey, what you told me the other day, was that true? I thought we were cool because we hadn't brought it up. And I said, yeah, that's the truth. And she says, huh, okay. Now, I don't know how she processed that. I don't know what happened afterwards, but I just stopped talking about it. And the sad part, every single friend I had that was male, she instantly thought, is that one of your, no, no, I do have straight friends, which was funny. But then I reached this point, it was in 2002, and I was sitting at church, this church in Long Beach, this wonderful church in Long Beach. I was sitting on the last row because my whole family was there. And I literally went to church that Sunday to tell my family that I was moving. I was moving out of the city far, far away to let them know you're not going to see me a lot. I'm going to be gone. But my aunt kept asking me to come to church. I went. I didn't want to go to church. I was anti-church at this point. And I was sitting in the last row, and I heard the voice of the Lord clearly say, "That's enough. Stop." Oh. And I went home and broke up with my partner. I said, I can't be with you no more. I got to get back in church. I got to accept my call in the ministry. Told all of my friends that I can't do this anymore, and literally I started the pathway to just trying to be heterosexual. And I went. The thing about it, and this all ties into my book, the thing about it, what was so funny was when I told people that I'm no longer gay, I'm straight, and I'm telling Christians this, they said, okay, well, go out and get you some females and do what you got to do to make sure.
Really?
I was like, oh, yeah. They pushed me to go and be intimate with women for validation to make sure. And I'm like, so y'all telling me on one end, I can't do this, but on this end, y'all pushing me to go do this.
Right. I think that's very common.
Yeah. So I was like, so what does living holy look like? What does it? I'm confused. Now I'm confused because if I'm fornicating with women, I'm okay. I'm just being a man. But if I'm doing it with men, now I'm going. So for like a year and a half, I was confused on how to do this. Like, how do I date? How do I go out? What do women want from me? So after that, literally the last girl I dated, and it was a great relationship, but I met a guy. And when I met the guy, feelings sparked. And I told God, I said, Lord, you need to figure this. We got to figure this out. We got to figure this out. And then I just stepped away and I started talking to this guy, and it was atrocious. And I thought that it was my punishment. Like, it was horrible. But that's the second time I came out to my mom. And my mom said, the Lord just told me that you are gay again. And I said, well, you okay? She says, at this point, God, she was so tired because I was just up and down, but I had been preaching all over town. I was doing phenomenal work in the field of HIV education. I was ministering. I was doing a lot of good things. And she says, if this is how you are, then she says, I don't see where God is. She says, because you're a good person. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I am. So shortly thereafter, I started my collegiate journey. And when I did my bachelor's degree, it was really on HIV within communities of color. That was all I focused on. My master's degree was on integrating the church with sexual health, because I wanted to get the church to talk more about HIV, because I know the Black church to be a conduit of information and a source of support for a lot of people. If the pastor gives information, the flock usually is going to follow.
That's true.
When I got to the doctorate level, then I want to go a step deeper and talk about the traumas of Black gay Christian men who are involved in traditional churches. And basically my book is talking about what Black gay men who are actively involved in traditional non-affirming churches, what is their experience like? And I also interviewed men who grew up in the traditional Black church, and once they were discovered they were gay, they were kicked out, or they were more so tolerated. They were allowed to stay because they had gifts and talents that benefited the ministry, the musicians, the directors, the singers, all of that. They're allowed to stay as long as they don't come out as gay. And I also met a lot of pastors who have told me in secret, I don't think homosexuality is wrong, but they will never publicly say it because they don't want to lose their churches. So it's those kind of conversations, and the way that we have kind of bastardized same-sex attraction to be the talking point and the hallelujah moment in a lot of churches. It really caused trauma for people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and there's a lack of accountability to that. And like I said at the beginning, I'm not trying to change anybody's approach, but I'm trying to get you to understand what you say from these pulpits is life-changing. How you present it is life-changing, and you have an accountability, yes, to preach the word of God, but there is a love factor that is missing when you single out and isolate a certain population just so you can get your amens and to get the money to keep going. And when I think about the traumas that I have talked about with a lot of Black gay Christian men, and a lot of them who vehemently reject the Black church, even though their heart is so in tune to God and they love God, but they cannot step foot in the Black church because of the scar and the trauma. That's what my book talks about. And people are now saying, well, what about women? What about the lesbians? We never talk about lesbian women, you know, and how they have to marry a man, you know, to be this or to be that. So long story short, that is what, or long story longer, that is really what motivated me to write my book, because there is so many people hurting within the Black church, but there is a fear and an aversion to learning more about same-sex attraction, as well as some misinterpretation of scripture tied in to the presence of white supremacy within the Black church, because a lot of the behaviors that are found in the Black church, it stems from white supremacist Christianity and how they use the Bible to hold a lot of enslaved Africans hostage in their beliefs. So we don't talk about that either. Okay.
Yeah, I was reading that and I was like, wow, I never thought about white supremacy, you know, in a way of having some influence in the church and how we think and how we come across, and kind of like how we operate and rule things in the church, you know. Never gave it any thought in that way. So basically there were some conversations that were missing basically in the Black church that needed to be had, and so your book is having those conversations. When we come back, we're going to talk about the different approaches that you had into gathering the information and the interviews. I thought that was all very interesting what I read. So we're going to go to a commercial and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Hey y'all, it's Nicole D. Vick from Nicole D. Vick Live, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
What's going on, y'all? It's Kwame Speaks from Kwame Speaks Live, and you're watching Pyro Media Network.
Okay, so we are back, and thank you for coming back. Thank you for sticking with us. Go ahead and hit like and share. I'm here with Dr. Donta Morrison, and we are talking about his book. He's sharing information The Faithful and Forgotten. God, such an impactful title that this book has, The Faithful and Forgotten, because very true. I think a lot of people in the church are not even from the LGBTQ community, but there are a lot of people just in the church who work hard, do all the things, and sometimes they are forgotten. But I can only imagine how that must feel to pour a good portion of your life into a place that doesn't love you, accept you, acknowledge you for who you are. So thank you for sharing this information with us. So I had some other questions. One of the questions was, when you first decided how you were going to organize this whole book, right? And when I was reading and I was looking at the different stories that were written or told by, certain men in the book, what was your approach from gathering that information? What was it that, or how did you decide that, you were going to go ahead and ask these questions? I did also read where you were saying, now some people do not have quite the same memory of things that happen and how they happen, when they happen. Their stories can be a little different. Maybe somebody else from the same church or family says, I don't remember it happening that way.
Right.
But that's all of us, right?
Right.
I mean, we can tell the same story from different angles because we experienced it differently. So I can only imagine that people who've experienced the trauma that they have experienced in the church, they're telling it from their lens. And so what was your approach from like gathering all the stories, the perspectives of, did you gather any stories that you were like, yeah, I'm not gonna put that in there?
Well, fortunately, because it's my dissertation, there was a very regimented process to how I did it. And before I could even start getting the stories, I had to get approval through the university to interview these persons. And when I did get the approval to move forward with interviews, I just put an ask out on social media, qualifying if you are, a Black gay man living in Los Angeles who identifies as Christian, but you go to a non-traditional church or traditional Black church, reach out to me. And I got a lot of responses from that, and I had to funnel it down. And what was supposed to be for some of them 30-minute, 45-minute conversation turned into 2 hours. So imagine having 2 hours of conversation that you have to transcribe word for word, verbatim, and then go through those conversations and then find the similarities, find the things that can, that's the meat. And all of them, I will say that the majority of the men that I talked to all had the same situation, to whereas they all loved God, but they just were so burnt out by the church. My research, it was researched. They were so burnt out, and they all had went through those denial phases of who I am. None of them had reached a place of authenticity until after they left the church, like stole away, got with God, and then came back. And when they came back, they were now strong enough to say, okay, now I can move forward. And thankfully I could not, you don't disclose real names, because if people, I always tell people, if you know who I really interviewed and who you're really reading about, your jaw would drop. Because many of the participants, I would say covert. They're covert in the Black church. They're passing. They can pass and they can navigate. They can move, and that within itself is draining. I would always tell people, yes, I am a tolerable gay to a lot of people because I don't walk around, I don't have the handbags and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't make me any less gay. And there was a time when I would even talk and push my lower register down because I didn't want my voice to be high pitched. So I would talk a lot slower. I would talk a lot deeper so that I cannot be perceived as homosexual. That's draining. That is toxic.
Wow.
So that is what that's what I did when it came to researching the individuals, and they openly wanted to do it. They were like, Donta, thank you, because you're saying things that we cannot say. But I'm going to be honest, the only reason that I am able to speak the way I speak about this work is because I have a supportive church family. That's the only reason. And I tell everybody, if my pastor and first lady did not have my back, I more than likely would not have did that study.
Wow. That's wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll take that love.
Yeah. I tell them all the time. I did not want to go through all of that, because when you put yourself out there, when you're a target like that, people walk away from you. Like I said, I know a lot of clergy, a lot of affluent, high level clergy that are my friends in private, but in public, they're like, Donta, I just can't. I've had clergy that have told me, I wish you would not have come out, because you would be a lot further in ministry. Wow. They told me this. These are high-end pastors that have said, Donta, if you not came out, man, I could have used you mightily. I could have put you here and sent you here, but I just can't support you, man. I can't do that, but I love you.
That's got to be a hard place to be as well.
Especially when you're an earned
question for you. Yeah. Did you have any, I mean, because I know that, you interviewed a number of people. Then, of course, you have a lot of friends, a lot of people that, you've dealt with over the years in the community and all over the place. But during your research, did you have any aha moments like, whoa, what? Did any of that ever happen?
A lot of
it.
A lot of it. Wow. Mostly from the guys that shared, their families, that they had children. They were married and they were married for 10 and 20 years, and then realized I can't do this anymore. And divorced their wives to live in their own truth. The ones that had children who were gay, and they were trying to get their kids to change. You don't want this. You don't want this. I don't want you to be gay. Please don't be gay. The ones that have very, very close relationships with their pastor, and the pastor said, I support you, I got you, but I can't do it publicly. I just can't do it. So those stories were they were heartbreaking, because these are all good guys. They're all really good guys, and they have a sincere love for the church. They love the Black church. And the funny part is, none of them want to go to an affirming or progressive or an openly gay ministry. They I don't want to go there. I want to go here because my grandmama go here. My grandfather built this church. I don't want to leave. And the ones that have been kicked out for being gay, and their families just watch them get kicked out or walked out, they're broken, but they're not hopeless, if that makes sense.
It's funny because you're talking about getting kicked out of church, and I work in foster care and have for some years now. I just do it in a different capacity now, but I just know, I remember, it's so funny. I remember at one point when I was working for this one company that I was actually recruiting resource parents so that they could foster gay and lesbian children. I mean, I was on a hunt, because we had so many people, good people, nice people, but they just could not bring themselves to bring a gay, lesbian, transgender child into their home. And I'll be honest with you, I was not very successful. And I don't think it was my approach or lack of or whatever, but I just think some people just were not ready for that, and so what we found was a lot of our children who are still homeless, living on the streets, selling their bodies, couch surfing, all those things are from the community, from the LGBTQ community, and they just don't have anywhere to go. They have no one to turn to,
Right.
you know, and so it's really saddening. It's really heartbreaking to hear those stories and to see those babies, you know, living on the street like that, you know. So rejection at any age, at any stage of your life is very traumatic.
Right.
Very traumatic. So I can only imagine that a lot of the men that you were interviewing and talking to, this was not their first time being rejected. You know, they experienced that type of trauma from the very first time they said, I am, you know.
Yeah.
So that's something to really consider. Let me see. Go ahead. No, please.
In my book, I also, just so people can have just some understanding, I also talk about intersectionality. So in my book, I talk about critical race theory, minority stress theory, and intersectionality. And intersectionality is one of my favorites because it talks about the avenues that we have to exist in. So I'm Black first, so that's my minority stress. I have to deal with being Black in America. You know, at any given moment, I have to worry about, is this the day where racism is going to rear its ugly head against me? So I have to navigate that. Then I have to navigate being gay. So there's a lot of homophobia in America, you know, so I'm Black and I'm gay and I'm living with HIV. So I'm Black, gay, HIV positive. So those are three intersections in which I have to exist. And every day I have to figure out which one am I going to have to battle with on any given day. When you go on social media, my Blackness is attacked. My sexual orientation is attacked. My HIV status is attacked. Everything to somebody is either disgusting, nasty, an abomination, or whatever. So unless you have a solid mental, or you're rooted in some kind of strength that just keeps you going, you are cracked under that pressure. Intersectionality is so critical, especially for people of color, because we have to navigate all these different roads while still keeping our head up in a white America, by still trying to navigate, still doing that. And because now that I'm a doctor, a PhD, the number of Black doctors is very small. Then you got Black gay male doctors, smaller. You know, at my graduation, I think I was the only Black male PhD that graduated that day, you know, and then you add my orientation to it, you add everything else to it. I'm a very less than 1 percentile out there. So when I go into rooms, I'm not surrounded by people who look and love like me, but they want me to be the spokesperson for all things Black, all things gay, all things HIV. So I'm doing a lot of talking, which is why I need more people to understand this trauma and this experience so they can say, okay, Donta, we get it. We got your back. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. I love that. Yeah, I love the fact that even, you know, because I think sometimes people think that just because, okay, I'm Black, I'm a woman, you know, I'm a female woman, I'm this, I'm that, I'm educated, I'm a boss on my job, I'm all these things, right?
Right.
I think sometimes people think that we just have the corner market on the knowledge of what everybody who's like me goes through.
Right.
But everybody has their own experience, you know.
Exactly.
I just in the environment that I'm in, I look like me, but then there's another Black woman, educated, boss, who looks like her. And sometimes we're judged on that. How we look, how we dress, how we speak, you know, how tall we are, how fat we are, you know, it's just so many things, you know, like you said, we have to navigate through all of that just to say, this is how this is going to work today. You know, I'm the boss here. This is how it's going to go down. You know, I don't care. I got on blue jeans. You know, I gained 10 pounds last month, whatever. But we have to fight through all of that. So I get that whole thing on intersectionality. Being in the crosshairs of different parts of who you are. So that's good. How did the people you spoke with describe the emotional or spiritual impact of their experience of the Black church? What was like a common thread?
They were disconnected. They were disconnected from the church, but they were connected to God. They were only at church to get their check. They had no buy-in. They had no buy-in with the church because they thought a lot of the pastors were full of you know what, because they knew what the pastors were doing behind closed doors, behind the scenes, but then giving this show for the people. So they had seen so much. We're dealing with leaders in the Black church. These are high-end musicians. These are singers and directors and elders and preachers. These are guys that had access to behind the scenes. So they had seen so much. So anytime that someone would want to point out who they were, they would sit back and chuckle. So they had no confidence in the Black church, but they loved God, but they were there to get their check and go home. It became just a job for them. It was a job. It was just something to do on Sunday, and they would bounce around from different spots on Sundays to get multiple checks. But when it came to the Black church, they would not just go on their own if there was not a payout. They were detached. Yeah. They were detached.
Wow, completely detached.
They felt that no one was being transparent and no one was being honest. And if you're telling me one thing behind closed doors, but to the people you're saying something totally different, I don't know where to place you, bruh. You know, you don't keep it 100, you don't keep it real. So I'm good. Just make sure the check clear. That was another common thread. That was a common thread. Yeah.
That was a common that was a common thread.
That was a common thread. Wow. There was no buy-in to the church itself.
Gosh.
Yeah, they've given up.
Wow. So when you wrote this book, or should I ask, how did writing this book affect your personality and your profession? Did you get mad at some things and have a different attitude about, certain situations? I mean, did it affect you personally? I mean, of course, professionally, because, you gain knowledge and, it took you to a whole nother level. But did some of that stuff, did it kind of, did you get triggered at any point about something?
It was definitely triggering. It was triggering. But for me, I'm the kind of person now that needs to know the why. What is the why? Give me to the why. Once I know the why, I'm not as upset or bothered. So because I had did so much research in the chapter 2 of your dissertation, that's all the lit review. That's like 200, articles you got to read. So I had done all this research about it and what leads to the trauma. By the time I got to the interviews, they were just supporting what I already researched. So it didn't throw me off. It was like, wow, so the research is not lying. This is really true.
So was there a lot of research out there?
Oh, Not on the realm that I did it, as far as the actual the impacts, but there's a lot of research about the Black church and white supremacy. There's a lot of research about intersectionality and minority stress, and of course, critical race theory, because that was a hot topic when I wrote my dissertation.
Right,
but
very hot topic.
Yeah, the personal story is not a lot, but the roots of the Black church and what the Black church stem from this survival ideology that just leads us. And then even talking about James Cone, Black liberation theology. And then how we forgot about the season when women rose up and said, yo, we can preach, we can teach, we can this, because before then they were not allowed to do anything in the church. They had to sit off to the side. But then women came up and women were like, well, wait a minute. Now we're just as called, just as qualified. And you saw this whole movement happen where women were combating biblical scriptures and saying that's a misinterpretation. That's being taught wrong. And we saw an evolve happen. Now, I'm not going to say the same thing's going to happen with the LGBTQ community, but there is a lot of refute occurring right now to combat these clobber passages that are being used to oppress the sexually marginalized. So I do think over time, probably in a few generations, this is going to be a dead argument, a dead point, because in the Black community, first of all, we have a lot bigger fish to fry than who is doing what with whom. We got some issues internally and externally than to keep singling out gay people. That it's becoming kind of dated. at this point. It's like, okay, let's move on to something else. Let's talk about this now. So I think that from my research and from what I have researched, there is a lot of talk out there that is combating the oppression that we see within the Black church. There's a lot of talk that's happening that really just combats it. And I'm hoping that something will shift, But yeah, I wasn't triggered. I was further enlightened. I'll put it that way.
Oh, okay. I like that. I like that. So we are coming to a close here. What do you want your readers and today's listeners? What do you hope they take away from your book?
I hope they take away love. I wrote this book in love and to push love and to support love and to realize that love is love and love is God. And we have a lot of catchphrases when it comes to church and Christianity, but are we really loving our neighbor the way we love ourselves? Are we really doing that? Are you really taking the time to get to know people? I've had a lot of people that tell me, oh my God, Donta, I had no idea you were gay. Well, why would I tell you that? How does that even serve you that you need to know? You know I'm a good person, right? When you were hungry, I took you out to eat. We have a good time. And I think when we get out of people's bedrooms, we'll live a lot better. And we begin to just focus on ourselves. A lot of people are taking the spotlight off of their own stuff to look at somebody else's for just a moment.
Absolutely.
But I really wrote this book to enlighten and to educate and to encourage pastors to rethink what they say from the pulpit. To be an ear to that young gay boy that's going to come to him and say, Pastor, I think I'm gay, and not kick him out. Not take him to the strip club like Kwame shared, not push him to go out there and get with somebody's granddaughter to prove that he's a man, but to hear what this young man is saying, just to hear. And I also want to clarify, all of us have not been touched or molested or sexually assaulted. We were not, we were not lured into being gay. That didn't happen. It's just who we are. I knew when I was very, very, very little that I was gay, but I didn't know what gay was. I had no idea what it was, but I knew that something about me was not like the other little boys. And I mean, when I was little, like 5, 6, little. But, and I want this to be an eye opener, and I want to hope it eradicates the fear of having these tough conversations. I even applaud you. You're a co-pastor of a church, a traditional church. You're a co-pastor, and you're having me on your show to talk about this, albeit you've known me like half my life, but this is still it's a very sensitive and complicated conversation for some clergy to have. So hopefully this is the beginning of many more.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are some who may think differently. I mean, it's okay.
Come on, you can do it.
Say what I was thinking.
Come on.
I don't know. I've never understood why I had to focus on what people did in their private life, and that was a part of the fish fry we're having next Friday, or the youth program that's going on next Tuesday. It just, why that subject always comes up, I don't know. It's just, I've never understood why people had to say mean and evil things from the pulpit or from other platforms, and I feel like sometimes to hide certain things, about themselves or whatever. But it's never been something that I've ever saw useful or necessary. So I just want to thank you for being on my show, for sharing your book, for sharing your expertise, just sharing yourself and being very open and transparent about who you are and what you believe. And I believe you'll help some people, you'll help some pastors, I think we did a good thing today. So I just want to say to all of our guests, the viewers, take some time out to think about the things you say and how you move and how you judge and and how you devalue people, you know, based on things that really are not any of your business. So let's put his book back up there again.
Please buy it, y'all. Please, I got school
Faithful
on.
and Forgotten, Navigating Race. And you know what? I have read many books. Let me just put this out there. I've read many books that I didn't necessarily agree with everything in the book, but you know what? It was good information. And so I think that, you know, you can gather some good information. It was very interesting to me. So thank you.
And I love healthy discourse. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. You know, and you all take care of yourselves, right? It's cold and flu season. Take care of yourself. Amen. We love you. Take care.
Thank you for watching Pyro Media Network. For more information, please visit pyromedianetwork.com.